Special breaking news at home edition of Seattle Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Schultz here with you as Pete Carroll is back, ladies and gentlemen. He has been named the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, effectively leaving his role within the Seahawks organization. We have instant reaction. We'll share our thoughts about Pete taking his talents to Sin City coming up here on today's program. Before we do any of that, folks, want to make sure you're subscribed to Seahawks Today. The latest happenings in your favorite team we have covered all off-season long. We're talking trades, free agency, the draft, the offensive coordinator search. We are all over it here on the channel. Even when we have breaking news like this, when I have an off day, when I'm at home, I was literally just in bed a few moments ago. We're getting out of bed to bring you a video here on the channel. If you can thank me for bringing you up-to-the-minute coverage by subscribing, that would do us wonders, folks. We would appreciate that if you subscribe now for free. We're in a sub-battle with our Niners channel this week. Subscribe now. You'll be glad you did. Let's beat the Niners. All right, Pete Carroll headed to the Las Vegas Raiders. And I got to say, this is a bit of a surprise for Las Vegas to go this direction here. We heard all about Tom Brady, the minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, heading this thing up, and that he was going to have a big say in who this next head coach was going to be. And what you thought early on was that Tom Brady was going to look at somebody with an offensive background. Ben Johnson, the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, was heavily discussed as potentially going to the Las Vegas Raiders. He ultimately ended up with the Chicago Bears. And then, he brings in his guy, John Spytek, who was the assistant GM in Tampa and was there, of course, when Tom Brady won his Super Bowl there. So things that are certainly familiar of sorts. And then out of nowhere, within the last 48 hours, Pete Carroll's name comes up, and they move through this pretty quickly, and he gets this job. And I got to say, when it comes to Pete Carroll, there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, I think Pete Carroll is cooked. I think Pete Carroll is washed. I think we all saw that based on the way his final season in Seattle went. With that said, though, can a year off potentially change things? Can you be rejuvenated? Can you be remotivated to succeed? That's certainly possible, but I don't think that's going to happen here, that Pete Carroll is going to get new life all of a sudden based on his year away from football. Quite frankly, I think he's too old, and the game has passed him by at this point. And the other thing that's involved with this is that Pete Carroll is a risky hire, because with Pete being a head coach for somebody like Vegas, you are not hiring somebody that's going to be your play caller. You still have to go get the OC and still have to go get the DC right. It's not like Pete is going to be your defensive coordinator, your offensive coordinator, like what Mike Macdonald is. Now you still got to fill those other two roles. And so that gets risky. And Pete, his track record was very hit and miss over his career on the coordinators he hired on both sides of the football, on offense and defense here. So to me, if you're a Raiders fan, I love the resume that Pete has. He's going to be a Hall of Famer someday. Nobody's questioning that. But the guy has struggled to find the right coordinators over the years. He's older. I believe the game has passed him by. I think it's a mistake. It is the Raiders trying to keep up with the rest of the NFC West. You look at the other NFC West coaches. Andy Reid, one of the greatest of all time. Sean Payton, a future Hall of Fame coach. Jim Harbaugh won a national championship with Michigan. Great track record in the NFL, of course. Took the Chargers to the playoffs this year. And then they had Antonio Pierce. One was not like the other. And this was an ego check that said, hey, we need somebody that's got the resume to go with those. And now you have that, but you got the worst coach of the four at this point. The other thing I would say this about Pete's circumstance here with the Las Vegas Raiders. You still don't have a quarterback. Pete is walking into a horrible situation with the Las Vegas Raiders. based on where they select, where they pick in this draft. I know a lot of people have been talking about, are they going to get Cam Ward or are they going to get Shedeur Sanders? Both quarterbacks could be gone by the time they pick. And then you got, Aiden O'Connell there, and you might go the free agent market, whatever it may be. I mean, Pete is in a much worse situation with this Raiders team, dealing with one of the worst owners in the league in Mark Davis, as opposed to the Allen Family Trust. First-time GM and John Spytek. Tom Brady, who's it's still very young in his tenure. We don't know how good or how bad Brady is to deal with necessarily here. And the roster's completely depleted. You got Max Crosby, one of the best defensive players in all of football. But beyond that, there's not much to work with. Pete's in a bad situation. I have my doubts about Pete, but I don't think this is going to work. I don't think it's all going to be Pete's fault necessarily. There's a lot of things that stand in the way, from bad ownership to a lack of talent to a lack of quarterback, and I just don't see this working out. Will you be rooting for Pete Carroll with the Las Vegas Raiders? It's a former division rival, might I add. Long time ago with Vegas. A lot of history with this Raiders team, between them and the Seahawks here. Pete Carroll with a different uniform, still staying in the NFL here. Will you be rooting for him? Weigh in, let me know. Type Y for yes, N for no. Chime in the comments section below. Today's show is sponsored by Game Time. Game Time is the place to go for the best seats, the lowest prices guaranteed. Whether you're looking for tickets to sporting events, concerts, theater productions, comedy shows, and more, Game Time has got you covered. The NFL playoffs are here. Got the AFC and NFC championships this weekend. The big game coming up in a few weeks as well. I took my dad to an NFL playoff game a couple years ago, and we had the time of our lives, and you can too. You can make memories for a lifetime with Game Time, folks. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets to find the best value. They have their super deals. If you see a super deal, that's one you don't want to pass up on. They have your customize your spot feature. They have their seat views as well, so you can get the visual to see what your seat is like. It's real simple with Game Time. You choose the event you want to go to. They got the prices listed. You choose your seat, and then boom, just like that, you're checking out with Apple Pay, Google Pay, Venmo, all major credit card providers. Game Time offers the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code ChatSports, $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHATSPRTS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. The link is in the comments and description of today's video. All right, so one thing I also want to talk about today is kind of what has unfolded in this last year since Pete left Seattle here. And, obviously, he did not want to step aside. The Seahawks wanted him to stay within the organization and kind of carved out an advisor role for him of sorts, but Pete was not interested in that. And things got very uncomfortable. I believe, and I may be wrong on this, so don't quote me on this, Pete Carroll only met with Mike Macdonald one time. And it was twofold, right? He did not want to get in their way and try to tell them how to do things, which I understand, to an extent, right? That is respectful. But Pete got his feelings hurt too, and this was personal. He was hurt by how he was treated by the Seahawks organization to push him out the door. And when they came to him and said, hey, we want to make you a football advisor, he's like, I'm not really about that. I want to be a coach. I feel like I can still coach. And Seattle was not interested in operating that way. And I think the Seahawks were right in what they did. And I think they tried to be graceful. Pete wasn't going to willingly step away, and they had to make a change, and they found a better head coach in Mike Macdonald here. So with all that said, I think that eventually there will come a day when Pete will come back and have his name in the Ring of Honor, and he'll raise the 12th man flag. I was surprised that day wasn't this year, but it's very obvious there was still tension there, that there was still some discomfort between Pete and this organization. And as they say, time heals all wounds. One day, this will be water under the bridge, and I think no matter what, Pete is always going to be thought of as, a Seahawk, and he's the greatest head coach in this organization's history. With all that said, it's very clear that there's some animosity with how everything was handled and where things go from here. So, I'll say this. It's going to be interesting watching him in Vegas. I don't have high hopes. I don't have high expectations that it will go well. I have my doubts about Pete, but there's a lot of circumstances that he's going to have to overcome there. But we'll see what happens. What's your one-word reaction to Pete Carroll becoming the Raiders' next head coach? My one word is interesting. This is interesting. There's a lot to unpack here with Mark Davis, John Spytek, Tom Brady, and Pete Carroll. What an odd combination here. Is it going to work? I don't think so, but it's interesting. Certainly is so. And then how much longer does Pete want to coach? We didn't even talk about that. Does Pete want to go 5 years, 10 years? Or how long is he going to last? Do they cut bait with him after a year or two? Lot to unfold. We'll be keeping our eyes on things in Vegas for sure. Appreciate y'all joining us here in this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today. For the latest happenings on your favorite team all off-season long, subscribe now for free. Appreciate y'all joining us. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And lock us in for continuing updates here on the channel. I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.